Yo, what's up, Hivers? Happy 90s Friday. I'm coming to you from the New York City area at 6 p.m. Thursday. I'll be posting this at midnight London time. Maybe a little later, actually, but it'll be up late Thursday night or early Friday morning. So, as you know, I finished doing my run through 1990 to the year 2000. Actually, I don't think I did the year 2000. Maybe I'll just bring that to you separately next week or something. But this week, I'm going back to my standard Friday thing in loving reference to 3-Tune Tuesday. I'm going to be bringing you 5-Tune Friday on 90s Friday. 5 tunes from the 90s every Friday. I'll talk about them. Sometimes I'll type it. Sometimes I'll do a vlog. But the theme this week is 90s music from bands that ended up making it huge, but from the album before they made it huge. So these albums were not, huge hits. I think some of them became, good sellers because, for example, No Doubt's on the list. Their 1992 major label debut, their self-titled album, it sold nothing, and then Tragic Kingdom came out 3 years later. Almost got dropped from their label after they recorded Tragic Kingdom. And the label was just going to give it to them and, say, take it, go sign to whoever you want. And they ended up, keeping their record deal. Album came out, and the album was actually recorded in 94. So it came out 2 years later. Came out late 95. It was recorded across 1994. So a year and a half to 2 years later. And, obviously, it was one of the biggest albums of the 90s. I think their mistake was not doing a follow-up within 3 years. It ended up being 5 years later. And even though it's a monster record and they just toured forever on it, way too much downtime. They should have had another album out by mid-1998 at the latest. And it would have been huge. But by 2000, they were gone so long. And it's just bombed. And then they ended up getting Pharrell to produce their follow-up. It came out a year later. Rocksteady, I believe, was the album. And they had some huge pop hits. Keep on dancing. But, it was like... But, they didn't write the songs. It was like a producer did. And then they broke up. Definitely a band that could have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Could have been the same vein as, a Blondie. But they just... They broke up too soon, and they're just missing an album in the middle of the 95 and 2000 records. But anyway, I guess we'll do it first. I wasn't planning on that, but from 1992's No Doubt, we'll do the single Trapped in a Box. And again, this kind of music, if this album came out in 95 or 96, I don't think it would have been as big as Tragic Kingdom, because that album was just a bigger production. There's almost some kind of like a new wave vibe. There's keyboards on it. It's not a straight up ska record like Mighty Bosstones or Real Big Fish. Like those bands. This album was. It was just. They signed a record deal in 91. Same with the Mighty Bosstones, who we're going to go to next. But from 1992, yeah, that's right, 1992, the album No Doubt, self-titled. Check out the whole album. It's basically, 80s, early 90s ska. And the song is Trapped in a Box. We'll do the Mighty Bosstones next. So their 1994 record, which is the one right before the album from 97 with The Impression That I Get. One of the biggest hits in the 90s. We'll do the opening track, Kinder Words. Again, this thing was out. It was on a major label. Literally, this thing was on a huge label, and it just didn't, it was too early for the ska game, I guess. They did end up in the movie Clueless in the prom scene a year after this, so they definitely, in the SoCal scene, they were huge. No Doubt even, in 1993, when they would play Southern California, they would play a 3,000, 4,000 person, venue. But then everywhere else in the country, 3 people were showing up, 5 people, maybe in New York, 10 people would show up. It just hadn't hit. It was just this scene in Southern California, and the Mighty Bosstones were from Boston, but they moved out to Cali, and the scene was popping out there. So unlike No Doubt, who grew up in the SoCal scene, the Mighty Bosstones were from Boston, obviously influenced by bands like Madness and who else? The Toasters. There was a lot of underground ska. Who does Mirror in the Bathroom? The English Beat, or just known as The Beat in England. But yeah, it's a cool record. I spent some time checking it out. Definitely a cool vibe. Let's see. So this will definitely be like the 90s ska punk version of albums before they were famous. I'm going to bring you some more next week, too. I'm going to bring you Soundgarden, Nirvana next week. But we'll stick to kind of like the pop punk and ska vibe this week. All right, so we got No Doubt, Mighty Bosstones. Next up, Green Day. The album is Kerplunk, indie record. This is the album that, the record labels heard and got him signed. Plus, Green Day was actually playing and selling, some decent numbers for, a total tiny record label indie band. This came out in 1991, Kerplunk on Lookout Records. And we're going to go with the song 2,000 Light Years Away. Basically sounds like Dookie, with not as big production. They actually recorded a lot of the songs on this album. They re-recorded them for Dookie. Only Welcome to Paradise ended up on Dookie, but they actually did versions that were recorded by Jerry Finn and Rob Catalano, one mixed and one produced. And they sound just like Dookie songs. It would have been interesting if they actually released, they probably could have gotten away with releasing a whole other album of all their songs and they would have been hits. But, they probably would have been called bigger sellouts. We all know the story. 1994's Dookie was huge. This is the album before that, 3 years prior. And worth checking out if you're a fan of Dookie. Next up, we got Blink-182, pick number 4. So this, a lot of people really remember like Blink-182's third album, Enema of the State, being the big breakout record. That definitely is when they broke out in the pop scene. But the song Damn It from their 1997 second album, Dude Ranch, that was a huge alternative rock hit. That was all over MTV, all over alternative rock radio, nationally, not just in California like some bands. So I'm going back to their first album, 1994, the album. Actually, I think that's wrong. I think it came out in 1995, and I think Apple, the streaming service, is just wrong. But I'll check that before I post, and I'll put the correct year. Just going by memory, I just have a feeling that might be incorrect. I'm going to go with the song Carousel. Now, definitely, you can tell the production is very low budget. This is probably again, No Doubt and Mighty Bosstones were already on big labels, and they just didn't hit commercially. Green Day was on a tiny label, but you can kind of hear the sound if you just use your imagination slightly. Blink-182, the production was, I think, probably the worst. But you can hear the songwriting. It was already there. It was very poppy. And I'm not sure I'm going to give you the song Carousel or M&M's. I'll let you know. Maybe I'll do one as a bonus. So that's 4 tunes. And then we'll go The Offspring. Their 1992 album, their second album, the album Ignition. I'm going to go with the song LAPD. So you can definitely hear it's the same kind of vibe as their 94 breakout success album, Smash. And this is actually on the same label. Again, we've talked about this before. Smash was actually on an independent label, even though it sold like 10 million records. So this is the same label, Epitaph Records. And, the production was a little better on the next one, but you can definitely hear kind of like the Bosstones and No Doubt. You know, it's not very much different. Where the Blink-182 sounds like it was recorded in a garage, and Green Day kind of in the middle. And that's about it. That's 5 tunes. You know, I was doing 10 tunes, but I think it's just a lot for people to listen to. But next week, we're going to go with Soundgarden. Talk about their 89 record, Louder Than Love. Came out the very end of 89. Blew up in the indie scene in 90. And we'll do Nirvana before Nevermind. We're going to talk about the 1990 release, Sliver, which was on a 7-inch. A lot of people know their album Bleach by now from 89, but we're going to stick to the 90s and cover their song Sliver, which was kind of their first single that made it to college radio and got some indie play. It did appear on 1992's Incesticide album, but obviously that was after it had been released as a single in 1990. And what else? Let's see here. And then Queens of the Stone Age, I'll probably bring you as a bonus next week because they didn't get big until after the 90s. But their first album was 1998, so I'll probably bring you that as a bonus. But yeah, enjoy the ska punk vibes. Blink-182, Offspring, Green Day. Basically the 3 biggest kind of pop punk bands of the 90s. And then No Doubt and the Mighty Bosstones. Probably the biggest ska hits were those 2 bands too. No Doubt having a huge 10 million plus, selling album. The Mighty Bosstones were kind of more of a one-hit wonder in terms of commercial success. But those were probably the biggest, quote, ska hits. You had bands like Real Big Fish, Goldfinger, Save Ferris. But I don't think any were as big as the Mighty Bosstones, impression that I get. Or the No Doubt Tragic Kingdom record with, Don't Speak. Even though that album, it's kind of like half like a new wave kind of vibe. It's not straight up ska like the first album below. But yeah, these are probably the biggest. These probably are the 5 biggest kind of ska punk bands that crossed over to commercial success. And I'll bring you a bonus somewhere below. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring you... Let me see here. I don't know. I'm going to bring you something. I think I'm going to bring you a song from the first Lit record. From their indie record from 1995. 2 years before... actually, no. Like 3.5 years before Island in the Sun, I believe is the name of the record. And that, has the song... Please tell me why my car is in the front yard. And you guys know the song. Down, 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 down. Down, 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 down. So yeah, kind of